After posting just 85 points in the entire game in the first meetup against the Lakers, the Rockets dropped 70 in the first half. But then too much Russell Westbrook in the third quarter, too much LeBron James in the fourth quarter, some scoreboard shenanigans with some points being removed and added and moved all around at the tail end of the fourth. And then Jalen Green comes up with a pair of back-to-back triples to bring the Rockets within one. And then Kevin Porter Jr. with a chance to win the game off of a go-ahead three-pointer that just rimmed off the back iron. The Rockets so close in this one. So many great takeaways from this game. And we'll break it all down for you right here at Locked On Rockets.
It's the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start.
With the second pick in the 2021 NBA Draft, the Houston Rockets select Jalen Green.
T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal.
I'm going to keep working. I'm going to keep getting better every day. I'm going to keep perfecting my craft. And every time I step on that floor, I'm coming.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Rockets, the best and only daily podcast covering your Houston Rockets. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and partner at Apollo Media. Be sure to follow along on Twitter at JT Gatlin, the show, of course, at Locked On Rockets, as well as at Apollo HOU. Today's episode of Locked On Rockets is brought to you by McDonald's. Proudly serving community since 1965, McDonald's has always been more than just a place to get tasty, affordable food. It's an unofficial community center. A big thank you to our friends at McDonald's for always being there. I'm loving it. Now, so much to break down from this Rockets-Lakers game. Unfortunately, we don't get to talk about a win. It would have been great had KPJ drilled the triple at the end of the game to secure the W, coming up just short on the three-pointer. But the wild sequence of events before that to bring the Rockets to within one, the pair of triples from Jalen Green, preceding that, the three-pointer from Christian Wood that was ruled a two-pointer originally that they had to go back and add the point to the scoreboard for, and then they had to remove the points that Kent Bazemore made off of two free throws. Just a lot going on right there, and it was just kind of a wild finish to this one. It was an impressive first half from the Houston Rockets, so no Daniel Theis in this game. Jae'Sean Tate, Daniel Theis were both questionable in this game. Jae'Sean Tate wound up playing in this one. Daniel Theis sitting out with right great toe soreness was the official diagnosis. And Alperen Sengun getting the start, much to the just Rockets Twitter rejoicing that Alperen Sengun got the start in place of Daniel Theis. And hey, the team looked really good in the first half. The ball movement was there, the player movement was there, and that is not a coincidence. Stephen Silas even said post-game when I asked him about how fluid the offense looks when Alperen Sengun is on the floor, he basically said, look, when you have a big on the floor that you know is going to pass you the ball, you're more willing to get him the ball because you know you're going to get it back, right? So talking about the other players on the floor. And that's exactly what happens with Alperen Sengun. Stephen Silas said he's so unselfish out there, and they run the offense through him. They put him at the high post, they give him the basketball, and so he has the ball in his hands a lot of the time. And so the offense really flows through him at times when he's on the floor, as opposed to Daniel Theis, which it doesn't, right? They can't run the offense through Daniel Theis at the high post the way that they can with Sengun. So having him out there got the Rockets off to a really great start. The ball and player movement was through the roof. The Rockets finished the game with 27 assists in this one. That's their second highest assist total. The only game where they had more assists than this was the OKC win. I think it was like 29, 30, somewhere around there. It was a handful more assists than this game specifically, but they were moving the ball really, really well. And it wasn't just Kevin Porter Jr., it was the entire team playmaking, right? You can go down the line. Jae'Sean Tate had 2 assists, Christian Wood 3 assists, Sengun 4, KPJ had 8, Jalen Green had 5. Off the bench, KJ Martin had 3 assists. They were doing a great job moving the ball to each other and finding each other for these openings, these little seams in the Lakers defense. That's why they started off the gate. That's why they went up 70-64 at the half. They had a really impressive first half from Christian Wood and Jalen Green, who scored 18 of his 24 in that first half. He is starting to really find his confidence at the NBA level. And I think the biggest part for him, and putting this game together where he had a really complete game both inside and outside the arc. So he shot 5 of 10 from outside the arc, had the insane pair of triples at the end of regulation to try and pull the Rockets within one to try and win the game. But then not only that, he was finding the seams in the Lakers defense at the rim, right? Because he's starting to realize that he is so insanely quick and he's got such a lightning quick first step and he's so explosive, like his athleticism is through the roof, right? He's able to get past defenders. And it's so important for him to be able to find those seams to where he can get going downhill and get ahead of steam going towards the rim before defenders can square up and kind of form a wall against him defensively, right? Because that's what we see him struggling with at times is when he's trying to get past a defender. As long as they're squared up against him and they have their chest right in front of him, it's really hard for him to like overpower and get past them, get past their body. But if he gets that first step and gets going before they get squared up, or if they're at an angle and he's able to kind of slip past them, once he's at the rim, he's a solid finisher. And so we saw kind of both sides of his game taking place in this one. Again, a big part for this one and the way that the Rockets got off to such a good start is they weren't turning the ball over. So not only were they moving the ball well, they also weren't sacrificing so many possessions. They only had 10 turnovers in the first half of this game as compared to turning the ball over so effectively in games before this one, right? In the second half, unfortunately, the Lakers ratcheted up their defense. That third quarter, Russell Westbrook really started taking over the game, posted about 10 or 12 of his points in that third frame. And then LeBron James did the same thing in the fourth quarter. And unfortunately, that's just what happens, right? When you have 3 stars in LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and Russell Westbrook, at some point during the night, those guys are just going to be able to turn it on and start taking over the game. That's just how talented they are. So even though the Lakers were behind, Russ started taking over in the third quarter. They had some solid contributions from Carmelo Anthony off the bench, who posted 15 points on 6 of 9 shooting. Not nice for the Rockets. So the Rockets did a really solid job, I think, defensively for stretches of this game, but then it just gets to a point where the better, more talented players are going to find a way to impose their will on the basketball game. And we saw that with Russ in the third. We saw that with LeBron James in the fourth quarter as the Lakers started to pull away. There was a stretch where LeBron had 10 or 12 straight points for the Lakers, kind of making that lead balloon for LA, kind of creating some separation, creating some space. And then we had the fiasco at the end of the game where the Rockets they did put themselves in a position to win, and they almost came away with the W. That Kevin Porter Jr. shot was right on the money. Steven Silas said post-game he had a great view of the shot. He thought it was going in. It looked like it was a line drive straight to the rim, and then it just went off the back iron. Would have been great to be able to talk about a win from this one. Unfortunately, we don't get that. A really exciting. This was easily the Rockets' best game of the season, like bar none. Like, yes, it was awesome, like bludgeoning OKC into a pulp, but this was the most competitive, hard-fought game of the season for them. They were finally in a game down to the wire, right? They experienced some crunch time minutes, which is great for this young group to be able to experience those minutes to see what it's like on the floor against another team, especially a contending team like the Lakers, right? And the biggest takeaway from this is this team is learning, right? And they're growing. When asked post-game, Jalen Green was asked about, if they're experiencing, if they can take away some growing opportunities or how the growth is feeling for this team after these 2 games against LA. And Jalen Green basically said, I think we're growing a lot, right? Because we're starting to trust each other. We're starting to, play, really understand each other's tendencies on the floor. And I think these are absolutely wins that you can file away in like the moral victory handbook, right? I'm not usually a big proponent of moral victories. I'd rather just be talking about the actual dub instead of a moral victory. But this is one where you absolutely have to look at it and say, okay, this is a young Rockets team. They were competitive with a Lakers team that is absolutely aspiring for a championship. They held their own down the stretch. They gave themselves a chance to win, and they ultimately came up just a little bit short, had a few things broken their way. The free throws, the second half turnovers, the defensive pressure from the Lakers. Had maybe a few things gone a little bit differently, we'd be talking about a Rockets win right now. And they made noticeable improvements from the first game against the Lakers to this game. And I think that's a really unique thing about having these back-to-back games against the same team in this, which is happening. It's becoming more commonplace across the NBA to see teams play each other in back-to-back sets. it's kind of like a mini playoff series, right? To where you can take the adjustments from the first game and then come back and say, all right, we're playing this team immediately 2 days from now. What did we not do well? What did we do well? And how can we replicate, how can we improve upon what we didn't do well? And how can we replicate what we did succeed at against this team 2 nights from now? And it's just, again, it's a fun little, chess match between coaches, the adjustments, how they do things slightly differently, all this kind of stuff. And we're going to break into, we'll break down some of the different defensive adjustments we saw in this game from the Rockets. I think Jae'Sean Tate was phenomenal in this one. KPJ had, I think, his best game as a point guard this season, really controlling the pace and tempo for the Rockets, especially in that first half. Things kind of fell off a cliff there a little bit in the second half, but that first half was really impressive from him. We'll get there after a quick message from our friends over at McDonald's. Today's episode of Locked on Rockets is brought to you by McDonald's, proudly serving communities since 1965. McDonald's has always been more than just a place to get tasty, affordable food. It's a place where friends and family can come to reconnect. Look, I don't know about you, but when I think McDonald's, I immediately think back to like middle school basketball games, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, when my dad would pick me up from the game. And back then, all I would eat from McDonald's was chicken nuggets, right? That's all I would want. So we'd swing by McDonald's. I'd score a 10-piece chicken nuggets, get some fries, get a Dr. Pepper, and, couldn't go wrong with it. Tons of barbecue sauce, of course, because it's the best sauce that they have to offer. Now that I'm an adult, right? Like I actually enjoy the rest of the menu. So like I can't drive past McDonald's without craving a spicy chicken sandwich, or if I'm like going to sit down and have like a whole meal, the Texas home style burger, that's my go-to. Texas home style, extra mustard, extra onions, extra pickles, get the large fries, get some barbecue sauce to go with the fries still, even though I'm not eating nuggets, and then a large Dr. Pepper to wash it all down with. So, I mean, when it comes to McDonald's, right, it's been a community staple for so long. Head over to your local McDonald's, right? Check them out, because everything on the menu, it's McDonald's, right? It's a staple. Get some nuggets, get a spicy chicken sandwich, get a little McDouble, head over to McDonald's to refuel and reconnect. I'm loving it. And continuing on here at Locked on Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Continuing our discussion on the Rockets 119-117 loss against the LA Lakers. Let's go first to Kevin Porter Jr., because I really felt like this was his best game of the season as far as controlling things offensively from the perspective of the point guard. And it really felt like in the first half, I mean, his first half numbers were phenomenal. So in the first half, KPJ was 4 of 9 from the floor, did miss both of his 3-pointers, but had 3 boards, had 4 assists, had 3 steals, had a block, and only 1 turnover in the first half of action in this game. So it really felt like in that first half, he was doing a great job initiating a lot of the drive and kick offense that Steven Silas preaches so much, right? Which is, getting into the teeth of the defense, collapsing things, and then getting the ball out to one of the open guys on the perimeter so that then they can get that left to right action going, get the ball moving side to side and creating opportunities for other guys. And not only that, just like some of the simple reads, right? On the pick and roll reads, he opening the game with a simple read to Jae'Sean Tate, right? Jae'Sean Tate sets a screen, slips it, short roll to the rim, and the defender was a little late, following Jae'Sean on the roll, and KPJ just hits Jae'Sean right over the top of the defense for an easy dunk at the rim. So it's those simple little reads, but not only that, it was, pushing the pace in transition, really running, getting the other guys to run with him, finding guys in the half court, initiating the offense, and not having those careless turnovers, right? And that's been something that I've harped on a lot for KPJ, is he's had some really careless turnovers in these first, handful of games for the Rockets. And it felt like in this one, even though he did wind up finishing the game with 5 turnovers, so only 1 turnover the first half, had 4 more of them in the second half, it didn't feel like a majority of them were, careless turnovers. It felt like they were forced turnovers from heightened levels of defense from the Lakers. And to me, there's a very distinct difference between just lazy and bad pass turnovers versus forced turnovers because the defense is just that good. And I think that's what KPJ experienced a lot of. That's what the Rockets experienced a lot of in the second half, is the Lakers were dialed in more defensively. And so the Rockets then started to struggle. They only turned the ball over, 10 times in the first half. And then they finished with 25 turnovers as a team. So 15 turnovers in the second half of action, to the tune of 26 Lakers points. Hard to overcome that amount of turnovers, but they almost did. So I do think KPJ had a really, really solid night, especially that first half again. And he needs to be able to put together a complete game. And so that's going to be something we're watching for, right? Is can he put together a complete game as the point guard, or is he going to have games where he struggles one half and then puts it together in the second half, or great first half, struggles in the second half? I want to see a complete game from KPJ. The other guy that deserves a lot of mention in this game is Jae'Sean Tate. Jae'Sean Tate was phenomenal in this one. Finished the night, 20 points, 9 of 15 shooting, 2 of 4 from behind the three-point line, had 5 rebounds. 4 of them were offensive boards, giving the Rockets second chance points, second opportunities, had 2 assists, had a steal, had 2 blocks, did have 3 turnovers, and had some exceptional defense on Russell Westbrook, LeBron James, and Anthony Davis. It felt like there were possessions where Jae'Sean Tate was guarding everybody on the Lakers in a single possession because of the Rockets switching scheme. But there were 2 things. So one, it was the individual defense at times on the Lakers' big 3. Now, even though the big 3 still had really strong nights, they all kind of bounced back from their inefficient nights in the first outing. Anthony Davis had 27 on 11 of 18. LeBron James had 30 on 13 of 21, including that 10-point tear in the fourth quarter. And then Russell Westbrook had 27 on 10 of 21. So the big 3 for the Lakers did their jobs. That said, great players are going to score. You just got to make it difficult for them, and you've still got to have some possessions where you are stopping them, right? You can't just give them whatever they want. And Jae'Sean Tate did just that. So there was a possession where Jae'Sean Tate stopped Russell Westbrook on the drive and blocked him. There was a possession where Jae'Sean Tate pulled the chair out from under Anthony Davis and forced a turnover, got him called for the travel. There were multiple possessions where he had some solid defense on LeBron James, making him really work hard for his shots. I can't say enough good things about Jae'Sean Tate's individual level defense, but he's also a great team defender. And one of the funny things that they were doing in this game was they were using, and Jae'Sean Tate did it best, they were kind of doing it with whoever was guarding Russ, but whoever was checking Russ in this game was almost kind of like playing free safety a little bit, because they were sagging so far off of Russell Westbrook that they were using that defender for Russ to kind of like be, to help double team AD when he was on the block, to help kind of double team LeBron, to just kind of wreak havoc and play free safety defensively, which is exactly what we saw the Lakers do with LeBron James 2 years ago in the bubble playoffs, where he would be checking Russ or somebody would be checking Russ and just basically playing free safety on defense, blowing up the Rockets offensive sets. So it was kind of funny to be on the opposite end of that. Jae'Sean Tate did a really, really great job of being able to like check Russ and still kind of be that help defender at times on the floor. I thought, again, he did a phenomenal job defensively in this game. It wasn't as great of a defensive outing as the first night against the Lakers, holding them to just 95 points. But the Lakers had to work for a lot of their offense. There weren't a lot of just gimme easy buckets for the Lakers in this game. And again, Jae'Sean Tate was a really, really big part of that. So wanted to give him his props. We've got to get the all-NBA defensive team agenda going for Jae'Sean Tate. Might be a little hard if the Rockets are a bottom of the barrel, like bottom 5 team this season, but it doesn't change the fact that we're going to be pushing that agenda regardless. So really liked what we saw out of Jae'Sean Tate in this game. Alperen Sengun, who I talked about a little bit in that first segment, even though he didn't finish with a super flashy stat line, he had some ups and downs in this game, right? And I think largely he was a big reason why the Rockets got off to such a really strong start. He did have 4 of his 5 turnovers all in the first half, just at times trying to do a little bit too much offensively, but things just move a little bit better with him on the floor. Really happy to see him get the start. It'll be interesting to see what Stephen Silas decides to do when Daniel Theis is healthy again, whether he plugs him back into the rotation as the starter, whether he goes with Sengun for extended minutes as the starting center. It depends on how long Daniel Theis is out for. Again, he was just questionable with the great toe injury, the big toe injury. So we'll see if this is actually a permanent situation moving forward. But a situation that should be permanent moving forward is KJ Martin. He absolutely needs to be getting rotation minutes moving forward. So I want to talk about KJ Martin's impact in this game and a few other storylines from this one coming up in just a moment after a quick message from our friends over at Built Bar. Look, I love Thanksgiving just as much as the next guy. All the great food, all the desserts, all the treats. There's so much to choose from, right? But maybe you want a yummy dessert, a yummy treat that isn't so like jam-packed with calories and sugar, right? It's the perfect time for Built Bars. Built Bar is the new holiday dessert. Feast on something delicious and feel good about it. One slice of pie has upwards of 300 calories, and that's on the low end, right? Most Built Bars are only 130 calories and only 4 grams of sugar with tons of protein. Replace the coconut cream pie with coconut Built Bar, or go for a raspberry Built Bar instead of that raspberry pie. Lots of good flavors to replace any pie slice that you have on your mind. Low calorie, low carb, low fat, high protein, covered in 100% real chocolate. Built Bar is a great option for when you're hungry. It's great if you're trying to lose weight. It's awesome. Check them out. If Thanksgiving isn't coming soon enough, go for a Built Bar or two, right? New surprises all month, limited time flavors arriving at built.com regularly. So check the site often. Be sure to check out built.com and use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off your very next order of the best tasting protein bar. So again, that's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. And we have another message from our friends over at betonline.ag, because BetOnline is back and better than ever. A new web interface for the start of basketball season and more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline remains the number one spot for all the basketball and football action this season. Head over to their website and use the updated desktop or mobile site to sign up today and receive a 50% welcome bonus on your very first deposit. Just use promo code LOCKEDON, that's LOCKEDON, to receive your welcome bonus. From basketball, football, baseball postseason, NHL, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Final thoughts from this Rockets-Lakers game. Again, the most impressive game of the season for the Rockets. I want to start with KJ Martin, because in 28 minutes off the bench, he had 14 points on 6 of 8 shooting, 2 of 3 from behind the three-point line, had 4 rebounds, 3 assists, did have 2 turnovers, no steals, no blocks for KJ in this one. But his presence on the basketball floor, he does so many little things and he does them so well. And then offensively, I talked a little bit about the vertical spacing that he gives the Rockets, and it's felt like for the better part of the start of the season, the Rockets have struggled to be able to attack opposing defenses in a variety of ways. It's felt like at times the offense is very stagnated, very perimeter oriented. They're not getting a lot of downhill action unless it's Eric Gordon driving to the rim, or unless it's somebody driving to the rim in transition like David Nwaba or KPJ, Jalen Green. But in the half court, especially, it's felt like their half court offense has largely struggled. And I think KJ Martin gives them another dimension offensively. And we kind of saw that on display in this one. He's so adept at finishing in and around the rim because of his insane athleticism. Like, he elevates so effortlessly. He's really become adept at finishing with his offhand. We saw him with that little scoop teardrop almost over LeBron James, where he just 1-2 dribble in the paint and then elevated right over LeBron James, where LeBron was it looked like he was a turnstile just cemented on the floor, couldn't contest the shot at all. And KJ just, drops the ball right into the rim. That's what it is. He's basically dropping the ball into the basket because he's elevating so high. So in addition to that, just his ability to finish in and around the rim off of passes from teammates, off of recovered, offensive rebounds. He fights hard. There was a point where he just tore the ball away from Carmelo Anthony. Carmelo had the rebound and KJ one-armed, just ripped it away from him. They wound up not getting a basket on that possession, but it was just an impressive, okay, that's a man-sized rebound to just take it away from Melo like that. So KJ absolutely needs to be getting rotation minutes moving forward. He shouldn't have ever been squeezed from the rotation. It's one of those situations where, I don't envy Steven Silas being in the position of having to balance the egos of some of the veterans on the roster, as well as figuring out, okay, how can they be effective? Because on paper, Daniel House Jr. should be a better complement to much of this Rockets roster than KJ Martin, because Daniel House Jr. is the better shooter, right? So on paper, Daniel House Jr. was the guy that at times we thought might be the starting 3 for this team. Then he wound up coming off the bench, and he's supposed to provide floor spacing. He's supposed to provide the ability to play make a little bit, but really he's the best shooter of all the Rockets wing players. That said, he hasn't been consistent at all from behind the arc, and then he got injured, unfortunately. So I feel terrible for Daniel House Jr. I wish him all the best. I hope he's getting better. But if KJ Martin can be at least relatively consistent from behind the arc, as well as providing everything else he does, he runs in transition really well. He's a solid defender. He's really been working on that end of the basketball. there's no reason why he shouldn't be at least splitting the minutes in that 9-10 spot with David Nwaba. So it was really great to see him out there in this game and for him to be out there as the closer in this game, right? So the Rockets opting to have KJ Martin out there with the rest of the starters minus Alperen Sengun as kind of the Rockets like de facto closing lineup. That was kind of cool to see that Stephen Silas has trusted him in back-to-back games now against the Lakers, where KJ has absolutely earned his time on the floor, played really, really well. And then Stephen Silas rewarding that by allowing him to be on the floor for extended minutes. So he got 28 minutes off the bench in this one compared to the rest of the bench unit for the Rockets, just 14 for Nwaba, 13 for DJ Augustine, and 9 for Armani Brooks, getting some early run in place of Eric Gordon, who wound up, again, sitting out the game due to nausea. So liked what we saw to KJ Martin, really invested in his development because he is like your ideal like 3/4 at the NBA level. And depending on how many reps he continues to get, he should be somebody that we get to watch develop alongside the other, rookies, 19-year-olds, young players on this team. There's no reason why he shouldn't be developing alongside those guys because he's got so much talent. The potential is through the roof for him. And we already saw what he was able to do at the end of last season when he wound up being given the starting nod due to all the Rockets injuries. So it's still a little bit of a head scratcher why he was the guy that got scrubbed from the rotation, but I'm glad to see that he's getting the minutes now, and hopefully he continues to get them moving forward. So last guy that I haven't spent any time really talking about from this game is Christian Wood. And, I did harp on the missed free throws from him a little bit. I do think that, one of my points of emphasis for him going into this game was the situational awareness and being better about understanding how defenses were checking him and not forcing ill-advised shots, moving the ball a little bit better. And I think he did a significantly better job of that in this game. He struggled, you can say struggled a little bit from behind the arc, 33%. It's a little bit below his actual average, just 3 of 9 shooting back there. But he was 8 of 10 inside the arc. And so I think that is a standout where he really had it going offensively. He was picking and choosing his spots well. And that's all I can ever ask of Christian Wood, is he's so versatile offensively that at times he does get a little tunnel vision in wanting to score the basketball. But when he is more patient with his offense and kind of lets the game come to him a little bit and has a mix of, okay, I'm going to be scoring inside. Okay, I'm scoring from the perimeter. I'm going to face up. I'm going to back down. I'm going to, finish as a pick and roll lob threat. These different avenues for him to score the basketball, the game looks a lot easier. And it was like a super early possession in this game where Christian Wood caught the ball in the middle of the floor. The Lakers defense was completely spread out. He had AD right in front of him, and somebody on the wing started kind of leaking in like he was going to come try and trap Christian Wood. And he immediately kicked it out to Jae'Sean Tate. So it's those kinds of reads and that type of reaction from Christian Wood that I want to continue to see more of as he progresses, because we know he can score the ball, right? And largely in one-on-one coverage, Christian Wood is pretty effective at scoring over a variety of different guys. He had the floater game really going in this one where he was finishing over the top of the Lakers defense a lot, especially in the paint. So some really impressive finishes from him. But for him to really take that next level, to take that next step as a player and to unlock more of his game and to unlock more things for this Rockets team, he has to continue to get better about figuring out ways to get his teammates involved by using his gravity, by using his threat to score to create opportunities for his teammates. And I thought he did a pretty solid job in this one. Generally, the team did a really solid job finding the open man, moving the ball really well. Again, Alperen Sengun being on the floor just leads to some really creative opportunities. I mean, there was one, right, off a missed free throw. Alperen Sengun ran the break and was able to feed Kevin Porter Jr. for an easy 2 at the rim. So those are things that Daniel Theis unfortunately doesn't bring to the table offensively. So it's great to see Alperen Sengun have a chance to flourish in the starting role. He still struggled with turnovers. He struggled with fouls, and that's going to be a thing that he continues to adjust to. But in his 26 minutes, a really solid performance from him. I will say that the indecisiveness from the 3-point shot from Sengun has to change. That's got to be something that's got to get better, in addition to just the Rockets in general cleaning up their turnovers, right? But overall, Stephen Silas was incredibly proud of this group of guys. I'm incredibly proud of them because they fought really hard in this game. The execution, although not perfect down the stretch, they managed to stay in this game, right? And for Jalen Green, even though he was kind of shut down in the second half, for him to be able to rise to the occasion down the stretch and drill those back-to-back 3-pointers. We got our very first look of Jalen Green operating in the clutch, right? And he absolutely rose to the occasion. I don't think Evan Mobley could do that. I'm just going to throw that out there. I don't think Evan Mobley could have drilled back-to-back threes to bring the team within 1 point. In fact, wait, hang on. I should say that again. Here we go. I don't think Evan Mobley could do that. There we go. Had to drop the mic on that one. I hope that's okay. That's a not cheap mic. No, anyways, it's totally worth it. I had that prop over there exactly for that reason. No, the whole, and I'll end on this, the whole debate between Mobley and Jalen Green and the subsection of Rockets fans that are disappointed that, Mobley didn't get picked. Cheer for your guys, right? You're either a Rockets fan or you're a fan of another player. Like, be a fan of the organization. I don't understand anybody that would be actively rooting against the best interests of the team or begrudgingly rooting for Jalen Green because they thought Evan Mobley was the right pick, right? That doesn't make any sense to me, right? Evan Mobley's had a strong start to his NBA career. So has Scotty Barnes. Jalen Green's been a little bit more up and down. Cade's been up and down through his first few games, right? So give these rookies time to develop. And when we get these glimpses of what their future is going to look like from Jalen Green drilling back-to-back three, each time that I say it, I still can't believe that it happened, right? Because it was just such an insane end to that game. I was ready to completely write the game off. I was sitting there drafting up my end of game tweet, oh man, they fought so hard, too much LeBron down the stretch, they just couldn't make it. And then Jalen Green says, no, we have a chance to win this game. And so it's experiencing those moments, enjoying those moments, and being able to think back to, oh man, I remember when Jalen, had his first taste of crunch time in the NBA, and he had a couple threes to try and win the game, and he came up just a little bit short. So thinking about, what this is going to look like and how Jalen Green is going to be able to take over games down the stretch, 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, what his future is going to look like in the NBA. It's exciting, right? The future is really bright for this Rockets team. And that's what these losses can kind of show us, right? Is even though they didn't win the game, there were so many great takeaways from this game, so many exciting, storylines, so many exciting individual performances from the Rockets' young core. And that's what we're looking forward to throughout this entire season, right? It's competitive games, seeing flashes from this team and watching these guys develop. And I'm excited, and you should be too. So with that, that's going to be where I leave off from this one. Next episode, we're going to do some likes and dislikes about the season, what we like and what we don't like so far. We'll have a special guest joining us for that episode. We weren't able to make the special guest happen last week due to some technical difficulties. We're going to make it happen this week, so I apologize for that, but that's going to be the end of today's episode. If you haven't done so, please consider subscribing wherever you get your podcasts, free and available on all platforms, Apple, Spotify, Google, the brand new Odyssey app. Also, subscribe to the brand new YouTube channel. We are closing in on 3,000 subscribers there. It'd be really, really cool to hit that number and be able to be like, yo, 3,000. So with that, really always appreciate you checking out the show. But for today's episode, that's going to do it. As always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.